All right, let's get into Vanderbilt against UNLV, and Kevin Ingram is with us, sideline reporter for football and play-by-play for basketball. So, give me a read on the 2-1 start so far to the season.
Well, they started off good, won a couple games at home. We played 2 home games, played Hawaii to start off. That was a tough game, but held on and won at the end. Played Alabama A&M and pulled away in the second half. And then the first road game last week was at Wake Forest, and I think everybody was pretty disappointed coming out of that one. Not just that they lost. Wake Forest is a good team and a really good program. 36-20 was a final, but it felt like Vanderbilt just made a lot of mistakes that kept the team from having a chance in the second half. And there was a key exchange right before halftime where there was a fumble punt that turned into a touchdown right after Vanderbilt had scored and was looking to get the ball back, and then another interception. There's a goal line stand by Wake Forest, and there's a fourth down play that got overturned. Just a lot of different things and turnovers and just mistakes that I think for Coach Clark Lee and trying to build this program, those are things that can't happen that frequently if you're going to try to win, especially win in the SEC and get to a bowl game, which is really the goal for this season and this program.
Have turnovers been an issue so far?
They have, we've seen a couple interceptions here and there, but the fumble punt was really big this past week, and yeah, we've just seen those things pop up a little too much. And I think more than anything, more than even maybe turnovers, was not getting off the field on third down and not tackling as well as they needed to. Wake Forest was 10 for 15 on third down. That number's got to come down a whole lot. But when you have chances to make tackles, you got to get people on the ground, wrap them up, and stop them. And I think as much as the turnovers, even though those were big this past week, I think some of the other things were equally as frustrating.
Who handled the weather delay better?
Certainly not me. I feel like we have
Yeah,
weather delays almost every week, and I'm looking forward to having a game indoors.
yeah,
I was
yeah.
telling somebody the other day that, like, I'm not saying there's a 0% chance of a weather delay, but it feels like it's pretty close if we're going to be playing at Allegiant Stadium. I'm really looking forward to seeing that place. And, for all the years I've done this, this will be the first indoor game I've ever worked. There was a bowl game a few years ago that was in Houston inside, but I was not there for that one. But getting back to your original question about the weather delay, I think both teams handled it about as well as you can. We came out and started the game, and they played about 2 minutes, and Wake Forest was driving after an early turnover and looking to score, and then it got down to a third down play, and they stopped play, and then everybody went off the field and they cleared the stands and all that stuff, and just kind of hung out for a while. And then Vanderbilt came out, and you resume play, and it's a third down, and actually got a stop. So I guess as far as that goes, everybody handled it about as well as you can. You just kind of sit around, and then you try to, if you're the teams, you try to warm back up and get cranked back up to that spot where you're ready to play again.
Talking about Vanderbilt football, Vanderbilt UNLV going down at 4 o'clock Pacific. We've got our pregame happening at 3, and Kevin Ingram is with us. He's the sideline reporter. I always like to exchange notes in these conversations. I'll give you a little bit of a nugget. The
Okay.
joke about Allegiant Stadium and a weather delay is pretty funny because game one, the roof actually did spring a leak because
Oh no.
it never rains here. And I'm not saying the roof wasn't built to handle rain, but there was a little stream of water coming down on the 10-yard line. And they had about an 8-minute delay. It was that was bizarre. So these things happen. Wild things happen in the game. I think a lot of this game comes down to who's going to be able to stop the run. And so far, UNLV has not been great against the run, and they weren't awesome against Bryant. And they really had a tough time stopping Michigan. What's going on with the run defense for the Commodores?
Yeah, that was a problem last week against Wake Forest, and Wake Forest runs that really unique offense, that slow mesh system where they hand the ball off, or at least put the ball in the running back's hands, and then the quarterback can pull it back out and pass, or the running back can go ahead and take off. But the way it works is they just basically stop and then read the play, and then the running back goes. Vanderbilt did not defend the run as well as they needed to. It was over 200 rushing yards for Wake Forest in that game, and we were talking to Coach Lee on our Monday night show, and he was saying, look, if we could even have trimmed, say, 50 yards off that or a little more, it might have made all the difference in the game. So that's another area, and it kind of goes hand in hand with tackling and third down. You got to make those plays and get the stops and get off the field.
So let's talk about some of the stars, at least by the numbers on this defense, and you can tell us more about them. One, C.J. Taylor. I know he's got a bunch of sacks already, and then the Commodores have a really big safety, impressive size-wise in DeRicky Wright.
Yeah, I think when you're talking about this defense, it starts with those two guys. They're really versatile. They play sort of those hybrid spots, safety and move up and play some linebacker and that sort of thing. But yeah, they're just really, really good athletes and good football players. C.J. Taylor is a guy who he's a sort of local guy. He's from McMinnville, which isn't very far from here. He's a big star in high school, and Vanderbilt felt really good to get him. And then last year, you really saw him start to come on toward the end of the season when Vanderbilt won a couple games in the SEC against Kentucky and then against Florida. He was really good in those games. And then it comes out this season, there's more on his shoulders, more is expected. And he's off to a good start, 4.5 tackles for loss, has 3 sacks already, and leads the team with 25 total tackles. DeRicky Wright, a lot of the same sort of thing. He's a senior. He's been around this program quite a while. He's battled through some injuries, and he's had some tough times personally off the field. But it's been fun and special to see him become, I think, what everybody was expecting. He's a big guy, and he's really athletic. He turned an ankle a couple weeks ago against Alabama A&M, and he was slowed in practice a little bit last week, leading into the Wake Forest game. But he got out there and played really well. So, those two are good starting points for any conversation about the Vanderbilt defense.
Give me an X factor on defense. Could it be the kid? Is it Darren Agu? Big kid, long. I saw that he was a Notre Dame commit at one point. He's gotten off to a pretty decent start according to PFF.
Yeah, I think if you're looking for an X factor, that's a good one to start with. Darren Agu. He has had an elbow injury that he had back in camp about probably a month ago, and it's kept him off the field. He was able to work his way back. He made his season debut against Wake Forest this past week. But yeah, he can be a big impact player on that defensive front. He also allows Vanderbilt to move some other guys around on that defensive line. So yeah, I think he's one, and I think he may have tweaked that elbow a little bit last week, but he seemed like he was okay. But yeah, really looking for big things out of him. That's a pretty nice X factor. Another guy is a sophomore linebacker named Langston Patterson. He's a second leading tackler, so maybe no secret. He and his brother Kane are both from here in Nashville. But Langston has become a really good, solid player on this defense. He's a guy, he played some last year, and you see him some on special teams. But, man, he's one of those dudes that just feels like he's always around the football.
Kevin Ingram covers Vanderbilt football, play-by-play for basketball. He's a sideline guy for Vanderbilt football. It does, looking, again, from the outside, looking at numbers, I thought playing or getting guys, 17 of them, I think for 17-plus plays on defense means that, Clark Lee's kind of into the program here, building some depth so that when guys do get tweaked, you have, a back line, a decent 2-line, because that's a real disaster in college football. When you have no backups and guys start getting hurt, then you're dead in the water.
Yeah, no question. And that's been something that Vanderbilt's really worked on building over these last couple of years. I was just thinking, even watching camp this year, how many more players there are out there now versus 2 years ago when Clark Lee was first here. It felt like there's about 60 guys out there. Now there's, 100 or so in camp. But building that depth is so key, especially, you look at the teams in the SEC and the ones that have been really good. They always seem like they have lots of defensive linemen. Think about Georgia, think about Alabama or LSU or some of these teams that have been really good. They always have that great depth, especially on that defensive line. To me, that's such a key spot, key position group in the Southeastern Conference. And, if Vanderbilt can get production and good depth out of that group, it'll really serve them well. But they've done a good job. They've added some nice recruiting classes, been able to stack those a bit, and feels like the talent level is definitely on the rise with this program.
You mentioned the importance of getting local recruits on defense. Tell me about London Humphreys, because he's a kid with size. It looks like he's a track athlete, again, a local, and he's been pretty good so far.
He has really nice performance so far through the first 3 games. He's caught 2 touchdowns, had one this past week, and also had another big catch at Wake Forest that set up a touchdown toward the end of the first half. Yeah, he's a local guy. There, like I say, there's quite a few of them from here in Nashville. He's one of those guys that just looks like, in running routes and catching the ball and not giving away when the ball's about to arrive to a defensive back. He just seems like he knows how to play football. Named SEC Freshman of the Week, had 4 catches for over 100 yards and that touchdown this past week. So really looks like a nice player. Junior Sherrill's another receiver from around here who's been good so far. But I think for that receiver core, they want to get more catches out of more people, more contributions, get more people involved, because that's another position group for this team that going into the season felt like it had a chance to really be a strength.
In building a program, how much of Clark Lee's challenge is retention of players with the transfer portal? Because Shepard kind of looks like a guy to me based on last season when he had 9 touchdowns and 60 catches, who could have been courted by a bunch of schools, but he's still there.
Yeah, that's always a concern, isn't it? Just in today's way of doing college athletics, whether it's football or anybody else, or any other sport, I should say, it feels like you have to re-recruit your own players at times. But I think for this program, they've done a good job of retention. They were happy to have Will back for his senior year. I figure he'll be in a, somebody's pro camp this time next year. But yeah, he's a really nice player and good. It's one of those guys. He and AJ Swan have developed that chemistry, and you get to a situation where you got a short field and you need him to go up and make a catch in the end zone. He's been able to do it so far, but they've done a good job retaining the guys they have needed to. They had some departures last year. Lost Ray Davis, who was the leading rusher and was just a really solid running back and one of those dudes you could depend on. He's now at Kentucky. And Mike Wright, who was one of the quarterbacks last year, he transferred as well to Mississippi State. And it feels like that just comes with the territory in college athletics these days. But Clark Lee and his staff have done a good job of retaining guys.
You know the story of Vanderbilt football as well as anyone, and where it's been and where it wants to go. How big is this game, with the SEC schedule on the way? I was there in 2019 when UNLV went in and kind of whacked Vanderbilt. They were the dominant team. It was not a fluke.
Right.
Commodores can't afford to lose this game, right? I mean, if you're trying to get to 6, 7, 8 wins, this has to be a win.
This is a really big game for Vanderbilt. Last week was a really big game at Wake Forest. Start off 2-0, and you look at this non-conference stretch, but Vanderbilt plays all 4 of its non-conference games up front, and then it's SEC after this week. This is a crucial game for Vanderbilt. You can't afford another loss because you start looking at the SEC, and okay, you'll say you lose this week, then you're looking at having to go 500 in the SEC to make it to a bowl, and that is really hard to do. Vanderbilt won 2 SEC games last year, as I mentioned earlier, and went into the final week with 5 wins and chance, if you could have knocked out Tennessee to get to a bowl last season, but came up short. So that's been the goal all along. But this week here is really big. But even if you win this week, you're looking at having to win 3 conference games to get that 6 wins and be bowl eligible. So it's really an important one on the road again this week for this team.
Yeah, Vandy's it's different than UNLV, but in some ways it's the same. Obviously, the SEC and the schedule is Herculean. Group of 5, it's a little bit easier in the Mountain West Conference. But I look at the 2 programs, and they kind of are mirror images, and trying just the standard would be, hey, just get to 6 or 7 wins.
Yeah.
Make a bowl game. And the other thing is carving out a niche in a bigger city. And now, obviously in Vegas, we've got the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, it is very important here for UNLV to win, or people are not going to show up. How does Vanderbilt carve out a niche? How hard has it been to get media attention and get a lot of fans out there? I know the stadium's under construction right now, but talk about that a little bit and the struggle of just, getting the appropriate attention.
It hasn't been a struggle because this market has changed a lot in the last 25 years. I've lived in this general area for about 40 years, and I've been in Nashville for the last 25, working around sports pretty much all of that time. With the arrival of the Titans and the Predators in the late 90s, that changed the way a lot of the media attention went. There's no question about it. Like what you guys are experiencing there in Vegas, you do have to battle more for that media attention if you're Vanderbilt, and the local TV stations and radio stations and talk shows and all that are going to give more attention if you have an NFL team in your town. That's just the way it is, and you understand that. And it has been a little bit of a battle for Vanderbilt, but I feel like our people are looking to push things in the right direction. This huge construction project that's going on, it looks like a mess right now, and it's challenging for everybody to get around. But when it's all done, it's going to be beautiful. They're building a new facility on the north end of the stadium that's going to be a basketball facility that will double as game day space for football. And then the south end zone is going to be a whole new building that will have all sorts of hospitality areas and things, also for student athletes and everything that will really enhance the game day experience for football. It's all kind of a part of a new athletic village they're building. Their plans for baseball and a new just office facility and everything for the overall athletics program. So when it's all done, this Vandy United program, and this is a big project, it's going to take years to complete, but it's going to be beautiful, and it's going to reshape how athletics is done at Vanderbilt. It's pretty exciting. It's like I say, it's challenging right now, but the end result is going to be something really cool.